Alright guys, here we go. Problem set 4. So this is definitely one that's a little bit tricky. It uses some stuff from geometry, but some stuff from later algebra 2. So in a right triangle, OAB, point B is at 5, 5, which if it's at that point, then that means I'm 5 over and 5 up. So that tells me that I am on a 45, 45, 90 triangle. If you have two sides the same, then the third one, your hypotenuse, will always be root 2 times as much. Not that that really matters here, but if two sides are the same, two angles are the same, so these are both 45s, that's your 90. Now, it wants the measure of angle BOA, which is this one here, but they want it in radians. So it is a 45-degree angle, and to convert to radians, you need to multiply by pi over 180. And then they want the value of A, so whatever this equals, they just want whatever the denominator is. This is something we will get to in Algebra 2 if you are in that class. Okay, the next one. A business charges $30 for a toy and makes a profit of 25% on the purchase price. What was the original cost of the toy to the business? So, since they're charging $30, that will be equal to the 25% markup plus whatever they bought it for. So you mark it up based on what you bought it for, which is why you times these two. And so then when I add this up, I just solve for x, so I had 1.25x. And then I just divided to get the original cost of the toy. Okay? If a parabola has an equation and is graphed on the coordinate system, what would the positive value of the sum of the x and y coordinates of the x-intercepts? So I just noticed, okay, I have a quadratic, I have x-intercepts, I'm going to solve. And so whenever I try to solve a quadratic, I always try to factor. So I'm thinking, well, multiplies to negative 32 and adds to negative 14. The two numbers that you get are your x-intercepts, so here and here. But this question is super sneaky and it even tripped me up. What would be the positive value of the sum of the x and y coordinates? So when I add the x and y value here, and when I add the x and y value there, you want whichever sum is positive, which this one definitely will be, because it's going to be a positive number plus 0, because in both cases, y is just 0. And if this is the situation, then that's negative. So, oh my gosh, you couldn't see any of that. Great. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I'll pay better attention to what I'm showing you. Okay, set 5. Moving right along. If the square root of x is x minus 3, what would be the sum of the solutions of this equation? Okay, so this is something Algebra 2 that we have done, but I just didn't want that square root there, so I squared both sides, making sure that I square all of this. And when I do, I really need to write it twice and FOIL. So you'll end up with x squared minus 6x plus 9. Then if I'm trying to solve a quadratic, which now that's what this is, I'd make it equal to 0. So I had 0 equals x squared minus 7x plus 9. Now it wants the sum of the solutions. So I tried to factor, but I don't think that it worked. So I had to do the quadratic formula. So I did x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, this is not it, but let's say you go through and your answers end up looking something like 1 plus and minus root 2 over 3. They want me to add those up. So really what I have here, and I'm going to take this up top, you have 1 plus root 2 over 3 and 1 minus root 2 over 3. And if you're going to add those, since they have the same denominator, it can stay 3. The 1's will add up to 2, the root 2's will just cancel out because they're opposites. So here you'd have 2/3 as your answer, which if they want me to round to the nearest integer, that would round up to 1, and that'd be what I pick. Now obviously this is not that because that's not an option, but hopefully you kind of understand how to finish. Okay, for the occupation problem, when the expression 3 over that is placed in the form that, what is the value of c? So that can be really confusing and deceiving, but I know this little rule where mathematicians don't like roots in the denominator. And if you have two numbers in the denominator, the way you get rid of that root is by multiplying the reciprocal, not the reciprocal, the conjugate. Oh my word, it's been a long day. So if I multiply the conjugate of this on top and bottom, on top I'm just going to distribute. So 3 root 28 plus 15 over, now when you multiply the conjugates you don't have to fully multiply. You can just do first times first and last times last. And so this ends up being 3, which, since all these numbers are divisible by 3, you end up with 1 root 28 plus 5. And now you are in that form, and you just need to find the value of c. Okay? Location. The mass of an object equals its density times its volume. So that right there gave me this little formula. Mass equals density times volume. So they are telling you an equation there. Then next, the rectangular prism weighs 4,200 pounds. So weight is mass, so I can plug that in. The dimensions of the prism, or the dimensions of the prism, are 4 centimeters by 5 centimeters by 7 centimeters. What is the density? So I must not know this. I must be able to find volume. And the way you find volume is length times width times height. So 4 times 5 times 7. So 4,200 equals d times, that's going to be 140. And I just divide it. Easy stuff. That's going to be pounds over. Yeah. My gosh, so easy. Cute. Okay, problem set 6. Rolling right through it. Alright, this is another one. A little bit geometry, a little bit algebra 2. So in a right triangle, we have that the cosine of x is 4 over 5. So if I call x right here, then the cosine of that is adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent to that, I could put the 4 right there. Hypotenuse to that, I could put the 5 right there. Which means that I could go find this opposite side if I needed to, because I could use the Pythagorean theorem. However, they want me to find the value of 3.2 times the sine of 90 minus x. So whatever this is, if I take it away from 90, I'm still that angle. So, well, I'm still those sides, I guess. It's hard to explain. So 90 minus that angle will get you this one, but then the sine of that is going to be opposite over the hypotenuse, so it's still 4 over 5. The sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So this is still talking about the same as cosine. Because again, this is my 90 minus x angle up here because that was x. Opposite of that is 4 over the hypotenuse, which is 5 because sine is opposite over hypotenuse, times 3.2. Should get you your thing, and then round to the nearest integer. So, whatever that is. Okay? Next. If x plus 3 to the third is simplified, what is the coefficient of the x squared term? So they just want me to multiply 3 of those. Excuse me. So I wrote it out 3 times. I FOILed 2 of them. So x squared plus 6x plus 9. And then I multiplied 1 more. So you could do a box, like a 2 by 3 box. It's not a bad idea. And then just combine your like terms and look for the number in front of the x squared term. Now there is another way that you can do it using Pascal's triangle. But we have not talked about that yet. We will eventually. Okay. Location. If x minus 3 squared equals 25, oh, I'm going to solve that for sure. What is the positive difference between the solutions? Okay, so I just took this off to the side and solved by getting x alone. So I square rooted, and I got plus or minus 5. Then I added the 3. And so when I add 3, I have 3 plus 5 and 3 minus 5. And you need to figure out the difference between those two answers. So one of your answers is 3 plus 5. The other is 3 minus 5. And then ask yourself, how far apart are those two numbers? Okay, last but not least, set 7. So the college problem seems a little intimidating. It's actually not so bad. So if f of x and g of x are defined by this table here, what would be the value of h of 2 if this is how we do h? So wherever I saw x, I just replaced it with 2 because that's what they want me to do. So in place of x, I'm putting 2. So f of 2 plus 2g, 2 plus 1, minus g, 2 minus 1. So then kind of following order of operations, I simplified what was in the parentheses. So I got g of 3, and then minus g of 1. And now for this f of 2, g of 3, and g of 1, I just went and got those values over here from this table. So this is telling me the column I need to go to, and then the number I need to go to. So I need to be in the f column when x is 2, so 7. And a 3 is smashed in front, so times. Then I need to go to the g column and go to the third one, so 5 is replaced. And then minus g of 1, so g of 1 is 6. I did that and got my answer. Next, you are given the following system of equations. If the coordinate x, y is the solution, what is the value of x plus y? So hopefully this one seems fairly simple. I'm going to replace this for x right here. Once I get my two answers, I need to make sure that I add them. So if I get that x is 1 and y is 1, then I should pick 2. I feel like I don't need to do that one. Last but not least, if a squared plus 16a equals 57 and a is greater than 0, this is a lot like that very first one that we did. So it's a quadratic. I'm going to make it equal to 0 by subtracting that 57. Then I would try to factor by thinking what multiplies to negative 57 and adds to 16. Then, if I get a number that's negative, I don't want to pick it because that's what this a greater than 0 is. And whatever number is greater than 0 of my two answers here, I'm going to plug that in there and do 3 times that plus 2. I think you guys should be able to handle that. Okay, let me know.